This is Between the Brackets, a Mediawiki podcast, episode 35, May 28th, 2019. Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren. My guest for this episode is Alex Tanchoco, who is the manager of advanced technologies at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, where his duties include running the internal wiki Datapedia. I've met Alex at a few EMW cons, Enterprise Mediawiki conferences, but I don't actually know much about his wiki, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about it now. And before we start, Alex wants to clarify that opinions expressed during this interview are his own and don't necessarily reflect the views of Memorial Sloan Kettering. So, Alex, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here. How are you?
Good. So I've definitely heard of Memorial Sloan Kettering, and I know it's a big deal, but for people who haven't heard of it, could you describe it?
Sure. Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center is the oldest institution in the United States, at least privately, that's dedicated to the treatment of cancer as well as cancer research. I guess that's in short. There is a wiki page for Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. So if you want the audience want to learn more about the details, they could take a look there. We also have a published annual report. I believe the latest I've seen is from 2017. So, and you could probably just Google that and get all the details about the organization. But it's an organization that I'm proud to work for. I've been around the organization for actually 33 years this year.
Wow. So I mean, what happens there? Is it both research and treatment?
Yes, we also do education for oncologists. So we have a Gerstner Sloan Kettering School where we're bringing students that would want to specialize in oncology. And we also train a lot of physicians, and they go about joining many other organizations around the country, and we collaborate with other institutions around the world as well.
Is there there's an affiliation with medical schools or something?
I guess I'm not sure how that process works, but we have medical students, oncologists.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the page. It's the wiki page. It's pretty amazing. It says there's over 1,000 physicians, and it treats more than 600,000 patients a year with approximately 400 types of cancer. I had no idea there was that scope, that many. So yeah, you've been working there over 30 years, 32 years, you said?
Yeah, 32 years, 33 years this year in May.
For a career in tech, that's that's very that's very impressive to stay at one organization for that long. How did you get started there?
Actually, I was headhunted. I used to work for, before that, Merrill Lynch, and before that I worked with the City University of New York. I was a systems programmer for the mainframe. Mainframes, I think, is really around at that time.
Right.
But I've been working with technology, microprocessors, Radio Shack TRS-80, if you remember that, Z80
Sure.
processors. And that's how I got into IT, actually. As a kid, I was playing with that stuff. Programming in BASIC, using cassette drives for storage.
Sure. Yeah, I did
the
that
modems
too.
then. I think the modems then were like 110 bits.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Anyway,
right.
just going back.
Yeah, a little trip
I
down
think before
memory
you were
lane.
born, probably. Sure.
I don't know. I remember doing all that same stuff, recording on
Okay.
cassette, putting little programs on cassette tapes and stuff.
Okay. I thought you were younger, but anyway,
Well,
that dates me back.
yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
But
Um,
I've been really involved with technology. So, even my role was doing mainframe systems programming. Like I said, I was working with microprocessors and things like that. So, actually, as technologies gets introduced, I've been playing with them, and I would mention it to my boss, where I'm reporting to. So, when they see something that's kind of using those technology, that they know who to talk to, and there's really not too many experts around. So I start to get involved with those projects, and how I'm
right.
increasingly, my duties like deploying Windows servers, databases, and things like that.
That was later on. That was, I guess, in the '90s, probably or something.
Yeah, yeah, I was involved with doing some networking as well.
Yeah. Well,
So
so you,
anyway,
I don't know
this
if you.
tangent.
Yeah. So I don't know if you answered this question. How did you actually end up, at Memorial Sloan Kettering, in the medical field?
Yeah, so again, I was working on mainframe databases. So one of the reasons I like to get into IT is that I could work for any organization. And like I said,
Right.
I had worked for Senior University coming out of and of actually graduating from Brooklyn College, um, and I got the job there at the University Computer Center on 57th Street in Manhattan. I was there for almost 2 years. And then I got headhunted, moved over to Merrill Lynch, and then about 2 years later, I got no more Sloan Kettering. Again, working on mainframe databases at that time.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
how I got started there.
Right. And what kind of things have you done there? I mean, well, I want to talk about the advanced technologies stuff, but before you started working on so-called advanced technologies, what kinds of other things were you doing there?
I was doing, like I said, database system administration using DB2. So
Oh, okay, yeah,
I helped
IBM.
actually that became the foundation and basis for our data warehouse, which is really currently still in use today. That's how we started data warehousing. We started to ingest a lot of the data coming from the various systems. At that time, it's really more of the back end office type things like payroll, accounting type of systems.
Yeah,
Um, so throughout the years, as we embarked on really using computer technology into the front end care, like scheduling, patients, ordering results for them, laboratories and all that stuff. Um,
yeah,
we start to integrate various systems together, and pulling all that data from all the systems that are really not integrated together into the data warehouse. And that actually had become, I guess, really the first use case that we have for our Datapedia. It's really putting all the metadata that we have there on our warehouse into the wiki, so that this way it's accessible for everybody that need to do data analytics.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, okay. Um, so what's does that basically describe um your current role as manager of advanced technologies, data warehousing and I guess enterprise integration stuff, or is there other stuff too?
there's other stuff too. I really just take a look at technologies in general and how the institution can benefit from that. I've developed the About Herbs application, which is really an iOS application. So I was an Apple iOS developer. Really trying to promote mobile use
Okay.
since it was started back in 2007. Also,
So you have a
um,
custom app that helps doctors, I guess.
yeah, it's actually it's called About Herbs. We also have a website. It's on our website. It's also available on the web. Uh,
Oh.
but it shows you all the different herbs and research associated with it. So it's fact based, um,
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay.
based
Yeah.
on research information. So um, and the
Oh.
content for that is constantly maintained. So basically, on the app, I'm pulling in data from the website's API that we have. So I don't have to update the app all the time. I write the app once, and it just keeps working.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, that seems quite a bit more. I mean, anything with herbs, it seems quite a bit more holistic or an alternative medicinal or something than I would have expected from a official cancer research center.
Yeah, so I'm also exploring other things like I'm also an Alexa kind of developer and just experimenting with that stuff. Yeah, I mean, again, you asked about my other roles.
Right.
So it's really anything with the technology. I've also we have like a little maker community at work doing like 3D printing stuff. So I'm actually working with patients now as a patient recreation activity, doing 3D printing with them,
Oh, wow. Oh, cool.
teaching them how it works and things like that. So, so I do my IT stuff. I do other things. It's almost sort of like volunteer work, although I kind of do that during the daytime. Our leadership lets me participate in this activity. Again, we're really mission based, as opposed to job description based. At least that's how I see my role. Whatever needs to get done, um,
Yeah. That
I
involves right.
try to pitch in.
Yeah, yeah. That involves new technologies and that kind of thing.
But anyway, that also brings up to this concept of Ikigai. Uh, but
Oh.
anyway, that's a whole tangent. If
How is
you
that spelled? Well, we can get. Do you want to? We can get into that
yeah,
later or no?
it's a Japanese word, Ikigai. It's about the wholeness of reason for waking up in the morning, reason for your being, that sort of thing. So I mean, that's how
Yeah.
I try to apply that concept at work as well. That's why I'm involved in a lot of different things. Anyway, it's a whole subject in itself, I think.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I don't. I haven't had someone on the podcast from the healthcare sector before, so that stuff is interesting. I don't know. Is there a connection between the fact that you're working in patient wellness and the I guess the more spiritual side of that you see for the kind of work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, for me in general, but I think it really applies to all individuals. I think if you Google Ikigai Alex Tanchoco, there should be a chart that's on LinkedIn, I believe, that I put in. I actually just uploaded that on Mediawiki,
Oh, okay.
I think as well.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah, there'll be a link to this from the podcast page. Yeah, yeah, very interesting. Yeah, there's a nice Venn diagram here. It's pretty much covers everything, every aspect of being, I suppose. Um,
Yeah, so I
uh,
mean, I think you asked before how I got in, and one of the thoughts that I had is I started with academia environment, and then and my choices like of jobs after that. I was thinking, oh, I kind of have to prove myself to myself, working in a corporate environment and see if I could make it there. And I did. And I got this opportunity to, work for a good cause. I know we spend our time, our waking hours. I was thinking, do something more inspiring, with the time that I'm going to be spending working. And that's, yeah. So it's kind of like my life's calling.
Yeah. This is. I'm looking at the chart. This is really a tangent. I guess it all ties into.
It all ties in, actually. It's all related. And that's why I kind of bring that up.
But it's interesting. I guess to sum it up, basically the idea is that this Ikigai thing is at the center of it's at the intersection of the four things: what you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, and what you're good at. Which I think there's a lot of truth to that. That some people just say do what you love, but that's
or do what makes money.
Right.
I have children, and I think this is really helpful. Put things in perspective. Some parents would say, okay, do what gonna feed your family and that sort of thing.
Right. There's also that perspective.
And there's the other side to that.
Not complete either. Right. Yeah, I agree. Okay, great. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. It speaks to me, and I'd encourage everyone to follow the link to look at that. So what were we talking about?
Everything's connected. So basically, I think that's what it is.
Right, exactly. It's all connected. So you have a wiki there called Datapedia. When did that get started, and how did it come about?
Yeah, so my boss was faced with a challenge at that time where, as we're talking about data analytics and just definition. So case in point, for example, chemotherapy, chemotherapy drug or treatment, and I guess some medication that are marked for chemotherapy could also be used for other uses, and vice versa. So depending on who you talk to, the definitions are different based on their context and that sort of thing. And I think for analysts, that poses some difficulty because the interpretation of what a specific term means could mean different things depending on different context, who you talk to, and that sort of thing.
Right.
So just clarifying if somebody's producing a report, what do you really mean? And depending on who looks at that stuff, the interpretation is different. And oftentimes there'll be a long thread of email of kind of like discussions and things like that, where a lot of the knowledge is captured. So the idea would be have information where all that information that was snippets of discussion can be put on one page, and I thought Wiki would be a great thing where you have a collaborative page about any kind of information, and it's sourced from different people from different times, where collectively, you're creating this collaborative document, right? Where all the history and is documented and who contributed those particular work.
Yeah.
So I thought I had played with Wiki before, before that, and Wikimedia, Mediawiki.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you done any Wikipedia editing, or at least read Wikipedia?
On Wikipedia, just on this thing called the Triumph, the Bobber. It's a motorcycle. So I
Oh, okay.
recently got into motorcycle riding, and I was looking for a page for it. It didn't exist. So I bought a new model of the motorcycle. So I just started a page. But as soon as I created the page, it got changed already. I guess it was being monitored and so on. So, and it was great, I think. So I think that's really the only page I've created.
Oh, cool, cool.
Uh,
So yeah. What year was that? Do you remember that you created that you first set up the wiki?
uh, 2017, I believe.
Oh, okay.
It's Bonneville Bobber, I think it's the page.
Okay, cool.
Do you see it?
Too. I can look it up.
Anyway.
Yeah. So okay, that's interesting. I met you in 2017. I guess you had just created the wiki at that point, or maybe you weren't. You were still.
Yeah, actually, I created a wiki in 2011, and
Oh,
then
okay.
it went live on actually the same day that Wikidata went live,
Oh, I
coincidentally.
see.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, you were just talking about creating this
2012.
Wikipedia article in 2017.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So 2012 is when the wiki got started. Um, I'm looking at the Bonneville Bobber article. Looks good. Um,
Yeah, if you look at the first page of that, I guess that's my motorcycle. That's when I took delivery of the motorcycle.
that's a photo of your motorcycle.
Yeah, I mean, I was supposed to only upload my own work, I think.
Right.
So.
Right. Cool. Um, I don't really know anything about motorcycles, but it looks good.
But that ties into this whole Ikigai stuff too. I've always wanted to ride, but I know it's you know, not as very the safest thing to do. But I try to educate myself doing all that stuff. But that was in my checklist, my bucket
Oh, okay.
list,
Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
speak. But
Um,
anyway, yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting you talk about the wiki initially serving as a glossary of some sort. I had an interview with this guy Jens Stekan from SAP, who runs the internal wiki at SAP a few months ago, and it was a very similar story. That's how it got started out, because they just had all these terms that it meant different things to different people, and it wasn't clear what people were talking about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even simple terms like pediatrics, right? You would know it's a child usually, right? But in terms of cancer, I mean, once our hospital is a little, I think, different than a typical hospital where other hospitals you go in, you get treated, you get cured, or get better, and then you're out of there, right? With cancer, you could be followed, you know, for life, essentially, because all that stuff. I think
Right.
it's important, and even like things like insurance and things like that from the financial side, they all kind of have like definitions on different things. So especially if you're doing analytics, where you have to be like really very precise in your definition and the context that's being applied to. It's important to have that view.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Um, uh, so how big a part of the wiki is the glossary stuff at this point? Is it still a big aspect of it, or has it sort of been overshadowed by other things?
I think it started to. But in terms of content, certainly I think that's the biggest content. Essentially, we have a process that imports all the definitions for the metadata from other systems, like our data warehouse, metadata associated with that.
Yeah.
So the formal definition, the field types and that sort of thing, foreign keys, and so on, they're pulled from the data dictionary, and as well as their overview of what that is. But so what we do is on the wiki, we superimpose that with definitions and comments of how that data is being used, like, specific data values, and maybe SQL statements on how people are pulling in data, and things like that. So, and actually that's where I originally used one of your extensions, the data transfer.
Okay, yeah.
So I use the data transfer. We export the stuff from a CSV. I load it into our wiki. But then I think at that point, the data transfer didn't have the option to only pull in what changed. So I think I modified originally to test that concept, and I think I wrote you an email way back then
this is all
make
sounding familiar. Right.
To make it part of the data transfer. So you have I think you added a checkbox there to say, whether to overlay it only the change fields.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming back to me now. Yeah.
Like I said, everything's connected at some point.
Wait, sorry, say that again?
Everything is connected,
Oh, I see. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we finally get to talk about the changes that we made. So the wiki has become the new home for some data that used to be stored in just a standard database.
Yeah, our DBAs, they have their own tool, Enterprise Architect, where they keep, all that stuff. But it's really not available to the community, right? It's really a tool specific to those group. So, we're trying to democratize, the information, the analytics, as the need for analytics grow, it's more difficult for our team to accommodate all the requests. We get backlogged with, especially we support cancer research, operations and that sort of thing, and the amount of requests for queries, and some of the queries gets like really complex. Talk about we have hundreds of tables and thousands of columns, from the different systems, and how do you join all this information, right? With this giant SQL queries, and am I looking at the right field for this particular topic and that sort of thing? With tying all that stuff with semantic Mediawiki is really very powerful. I mean, originally we really just looked at the page, like a text page, essentially. That was the beginning. But as I discovered, I stumbled, and in the process of doing the wiki, I stumbled on the semantic Mediawiki, and I started creating, as I started creating the forms. Essentially, our wiki had become a database.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's like really very powerful to be able to do queries. So I created templates, I created forms associated with that, and queries, and it's really very powerful.
Yeah, that's really interesting that the wiki started out as just, let's have a wiki, let's just have a standard wiki to has a glossary and whatever else, and then I guess when you discovered semantic Mediawiki, it became more and more of like an integration hub, enterprise integration hub, or something, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and on top of that, in terms of other use cases, we have a group in our financial services group where they're doing, patient, like hospital billing and that sort of thing. So they train people on procedures, processes, using systems, codes, and things like that, like insurance codes.
Okay.
and like ICD10. I mean, I start with ICD9, so I have I pulled in ICD9 codes into our Wikipedia and our Datapedia, and as the code in the US starts to get transitioned from ICD9 to ICD10, just to learn about what the changes are with the new codes, I also imported the ICD10 codes and create like a cross reference between the two. I think that was around the time that this was all new in the US.
Cool. Is all of that stuff structured data with templates and forms and SMW and all that? Also?
Yes, I had put that in there. Although I haven't updated in a while, that was really for educational use. And right now we have other lookup tables that actually, and I think that's one of the things you were interested in learning about, the Tableau integration. So now I have I have an ICD10, ICD9 translation and lookup table. You could just put in the keywords for diseases and that sort of thing, and it just comes back, and it comes from one of our systems, and it's just basically in Tableau. But the way it's embedded in our Datapedia, it looks like it's part of Datapedia. There's no, other than you just have a filter where people would enter the information and it just comes back in a tabular form. So it's pretty transparent. People don't even know it's in Tableau.
That's really cool. Yeah, Tableau, for those who don't know about it, is a data visualization software. I think it's not open source, but it is quite powerful.
Yeah, and I'd like to share actually some ideas that I started to experiment with, and maybe I know you're probably more of an expert than I am with coding extensions, but I started to play with like D3 extension, and I know there's some D3 format when you do a semantic ask or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've done anything with your cargo, where you can do a results format type of thing where you can display graphs. Various graphs.
In Cargo, the only thing is bar charts and pie charts, if I remember correctly, and even pie charts. I was sort of pressured into it. I don't think pie charts are a good idea, but Semantic Mediawiki has a little more in terms of visualizations. You can do, I can't remember what the terms are, line series or something. I don't know, but yeah, that JavaScript library you're talking about, D3, which is open source, has massive amount of functionality, and you can custom code whatever is missing, whatever if there's some specific thing you need. But it's not being used. It's not being taken advantage of that much by SMW and Cargo.
Yeah, I think it's really a powerful visualization tool. I mean, I think similar functionality to what I think would be interesting, where you can do a query and pipe that into whatever chart that you need, as long as you have the proper dimensions and measures, right? That you could fit into that. So the one thing that I know about D3 is that depending on the chart that you want to do, the data has to be formatted. I think it's in JSON format, but it has has to be formatted a certain way, so whatever.
Right.
I think if that stuff could be, if you have a standard set of data and, you have measures and dimensions, and then you can decide to change which visualization can come up out of that. Like, for example, you would have a certain, wiki query, right? Semantic media wiki query. And then you can just select the type of chart without having to redo your query, depending on what's available in your data.
Sure.
I think that would be cool to do.
I
mean, I don't have that running, but it's one of the things I'm interested in being able to see, to be able to do a semantic query and then kind of graph that visually.
So what's the format? How does this you created an extension for handling Tableau for doing Tableau visualization of semantic MediaWiki data?
Um, well, so the other stuff, it's the Tableau right now is not really doing that. But you can create a what they call a web data connector that can go through an API, pull in the data. So I mean, you can do a semantic ask right through just a URL.
Right.
If that, you can then return that as I guess JSON or a CSV format or something, and then
Yeah.
have that pipe that as input to Tableau, and then you can then embed Tableau. You can still do things like that.
Okay. Okay. So it's not a result format. You're calling Tableau and passing to it data that happens to come a URL for data that happens to come from semantic MediaWiki.
Yeah. I mean, you can do stuff like that.
So what kind
there's
of
a lot of possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Or maybe
Yeah. You say what kind of?
what kind of visualizations are you using Tableau for? I'm always curious to know what's useful and what's just sort of something nice to look at among all these visualization options.
Well, I think the power of Tableau is that you can it's interactive. It's not just, you get a graph and that was the end of it. I mean, that's part of it. But really, I think, their selling point for that is, this is not an endorsement of Tableau. Just trying to describe this.
Right.
But in any case, you select you click on any piece of the chart that you have, and that if you define that as a filter, whether you're clicking on a number or you're clicking on a point in the chart, if you define that as a filter, then it becomes a filter, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, you have a chart or even a thing of the different countries, right? And then you click on that country if you want to look at the population out of that country, or what are the cities in that country. If you click on that country with filter on, and then you can, once you filter that, then you can click on the city and then maybe see what the population of Berlin is and that sort of thing. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think something like that, we could do that on the wiki. I think you can do that now, but it's kind of like it's not a one. You keep jumping to different pages. You kind of.
Yeah. Well.
But to do that interactively on one page, I think would be interesting.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. Yes. Semantic Media has semantic drill down, and Cargo has its own drill down thing. But as far as a slicker filtered visualization, there are some options. I mean, semantic Media has a format called filtered, which is a custom thing, and then Cargo lets you use exhibit.
Okay. I gotta explore that.
Yeah, I don't know how nice either one is compared to what Tableau is. My guess is that Tableau's functionality is a lot slicker, but that's just my guess. But that's interesting. Yeah, that you want the kind of whatever the term is, OLAP. I don't know what people call it these days, but the ability to drill down through data and view in different ways. I guess I always like to ask about whether you're planning to release this extension. Although I don't know how useful it would be because Tableau I think is pretty expensive.
Yeah, it is it's gotten a lot more expensive than when we started, for sure.
Okay.
And I think, having heard, from the conference, Enterprise Media Weekend conference, a lot of the audience, I think a lot of organizations get into Semantic Media Wiki because of the cost. It's
Sure,
free,
yeah.
right? And that's why I think, for the community, having a tool. I mean, obviously, a company as large as Tableau having the tool set, having even a subset of that, I think for the community, I think could be a useful addition. I mean, you might not have all the bells and whistles of
Right.
a tool where you have, full-time dedicated developers and, specialize in that vision of data visualization. Some rudimentary stuff. I think could be useful for the community.
Um, yeah, it would be. It's always good to hear, about the state of the art, and try to emulate that to whatever extent is possible. So it'd be interesting to hear from you or anyone else who can do a comparison among Tableau versus Exhibit versus the custom filtered thing that of SMW. Um,
Yeah, I'll take a look at that and see if I could make sense and have
yeah,
something
okay.
that could be useful for us. And if I have something useful for us, I can maybe share that, or
Well,
if
yeah,
anybody
it
else
could be
interested
useful
in
for you
teaming up.
right. It could be useful for you to switch, and conversely, it would be useful for any developers to hear. This is what Tableau has that these other things are missing. Um, yeah, the only other thing I wanted to add to that is your statement before that Mediawiki tends to be used for cost regions, which is true. Although I think it's uh, as far as the structured and semantic quote unquote aspects of it, small s semantic, the data aspects, I think it's as good and actually better than any expensive
No, no,
systems.
I agree. And I'm talking about like the introduction to the organization.
Yeah,
I
right,
think,
right.
I think the power that I see in the tool, I think the possibilities are really, almost infinite in terms of, depending on who's using it for what application and that sort of thing. Um, so
Yeah,
I think it's unfortunate that, sometimes I think, especially in the corporate world, where, you look at a tool, you see it's free, and you think it's not good enough, right?
sure. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think given what I know about Mediawiki and the semantic aspect and cargo and that sort of thing, it's really a whole application environment. I mean, I think
right.
with Lua, what you could do with Lua, we could do with forms, we could do with cargo and semantic stuff. I mean, besides the security aspect, I guess of having that granular permission, I think that's really probably the only thing that's missing way for you to create a whole application using these tools. I mean, like with Lua,
Yeah,
imagine a code thing where like version control is kind of built in, right?
sure. Yeah, right, right.
If you, yeah, I mean, if you tie that with approved revisions and things like that, you can even freeze the code that's in development. You can continue to add to the code, and that code. Well, so would that really work that way? If I have like a Lua code and I say this is the approved version, that if somebody changes that code, um, would the approved one really be the only one running?
I'm pretty sure. Um,
Okay,
I don't know if
you know what
anyone's
I'm saying? So
actually. I mean, it's doable in theory. I don't know if anyone's actually d- um, done approved revisions on Lua modules, but it seems doable. It seems like it should work. Or
yeah, I would think it should. I think it would work because if it did have a transclusion or inclusion also on templates, right? That would work also.
yeah, on
Because I think I
templates it
just
works. Yeah, yeah.
okay. So if it worked on templates, I would kind of think that for Lua modules on a wiki, I think it should work too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and it means that instead of confining the coding to just DBAs or the equivalent or some very small group of people, you can open it up to a lot more people, and without the fear that someone's gonna mess something up.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I mentioned before is like we're putting in SQL statements. We put in like different metrics, formalizing the definitions for the metrics, and like which reports are using those metrics, and then ties it to like which fields are using those reports. Um, so we just started a whole data governance program, and we were also going to be using a different set of tools for that. But I think Mediawiki would, Datapedia would continue to be sort of like the tie-in to all the different systems.
Yeah.
We also have our ontologists are also using different tools for that. But graph, I think for a non-ontologist, it's a little bit harder to navigate, because of kind of the network structure associated with that, with a graph. And I think having the forms to display all that stuff using the semantic technology, I think it's a better way, I think, for people to kind of grasp it, for the non-ontologist, to grab all the concept in like a readable form.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't know you had ontologists on staff as well. I guess it makes sense
Yeah,
with medical data where there's just so much terminology and standards and that kind of stuff.
yeah. I mean that's relatively new to us. Actually, for the metadata that we have, it started to tie in the concept IDs associated with things. So that's probably something we're going to be tying into a wiki also, that ontologize the entries.
Yeah. Okay. Are you using Wikidata IDs by any chance?
Well, yeah, actually, yeah, that's something that I started to think about, and like how, I think as we start to talk about like hospitals and healthcare, and certainly, their ontologies that's already developed and that sort of thing, and I think tying that into our pages and definitions, I think it would, help with searches as well, and tie into that stuff. So I think it's really a lot of capabilities that I think we just really the world is just starting to scratch the surface of
Yeah.
what this tool
Yeah.
is
Wait, are
really
you talking about
capable of.
Wikidata or Mediawiki? Probably Wikidata.
Both.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah,
Um,
tying the two somehow.
yeah. So speaking of that of the potential of MediaWiki, is there some kind of long-term push to try to get more and more data into the wiki and out of the existing database or databases?
I mean, again, it's like one of those opinion things, right? For myself, one of the things that one of the challenges for healthcare is, with a tool like this, obviously, is privacy, like HIPAA, right?
Right.
And I mean, with our internal wiki, need to constantly make sure that nobody's accidentally posting, sensitive information side of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Because of the privacy type of, we're not violating any privacy rules. But yeah, I think the power of MediaWiki, like I said, as a development tool. I mean, imagine all the stuff, all the data that you have, whether it's disease, genetics, and how they tied into treatments and things like that. So we go into to research. If you have de-identified information, for example, I mean, you can use it as essentially a query system that everything's, like I said, it's tied together, right? And if you have a semantic technology to do all this graph network within it, you have this really knowledge base that you can mine and hopefully help with research, with cancer research.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Um, so, uh, how many people are using the wiki right now? Among both, I guess,
Um,
staff and doctors and whoever else.
well, it's actually in, I think our clinicians, I don't believe, except for a few who are doing analytics directly, are using our wiki. Although some of the reports, some of the Tableau visualizations, as we have, formalized a lot of the metrics that's being used. So if we have, for example, a Tableau chart, there will be a link on the top where, like, an information button, if you want more details about this report type of thing,
Yeah.
and the fields used in there, it would actually link directly to a Datapedia page of what those definitions are. So I'm not sure, because those are not logged in. Um, we have the option of people are just be able to view the wiki without logging in. So I'm not tracking individuals. Like, so I don't know, which ones are doctors or not. But
Right. Right.
if people are logged in, then we're keeping stats on those. But really, I think we have about 700 users,
Oh, okay.
named users on the wiki that are logged in, because I have an LDAP tie-in. So if somebody logs into the wiki, if they don't actually already exist in the wiki, it would automatically create an account for them. There's a custom code that I did in our LDAP interface. So it would pull in their email, and so on, their department. And so, at least based on that, I could, I could potentially pull in titles, but I'm not doing that this time.
Yeah.
So we have about 700 or so users. There's really only about 2 dozen or so active folks that are adding contents all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's not very big in terms of authorship,
Well,
but
it's all relative.
consumption-wise, I think, yeah.
Are there other people working on the wiki full time besides you? I mean, to the extent that you're full time.
Yeah, I'm actually not full-time either.
Right.
I have other roles. Like, I'm also the Tableau administrator, also doing, I don't know if you heard this thing called REDCap. It's kind of like a
No.
research survey tool.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so there's a couple other people that from the data side, that's contributing content directly. But
Yeah.
like the group that's doing the our financial services area, they have a couple of, like, they have the team of people who are creating content there.
Cool. But you're the only administrator, like person putting together templates and all the rest.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes. I mean, somebody else is helping me. I'm kind of like, this other person from another group, from our health informatics group, has been helping with the templates. So, for the one that they're using, so that
Right.
have been self-sufficient with that and extending the forms
Cool.
and the templates.
Yeah. So you talked before. I mean, we talked about the strengths of Mediawiki. You mentioned briefly, I guess, what you see as the biggest weakness, the lack of good permissioning capability. Is that? I mean, could you talk about that? I mean, what
Well,
you see as
I
the
think
issue?
and if we're talking about, like, from an enterprise, where you might have sensitive information. So, for example, if you're really going to cancer research, while it's still in progress, it still pretty much, I think, needs to be siloed, right? I mean, even if it's you expose maybe de-identified information, because until that's published, I think the sensitivity to that, right? So if you pull in those type of information, I think that needs to be confidential to the people working on those projects.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of other contexts, I think, on the enterprise side where, things need to be in a silo.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the usual solution that people have for that is just to create more wikis. So, if this department wants their own data, then we'll just have a separate wiki just for their data and only they have access. Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, I've been approached by other groups about that as well. So, and I think since, I think we believe in having all the knowledge connected to each other, even though something might be sensitive. So at least if you have a link to it or you have a page title, maybe that's not sensitive, at least it exists, right? You might not have access to it. And, there's a published author that you can contact about that particular thing, then it's discoverable. I think, some of the challenge of like a totally closed system is that you don't even know it exists in the organization, right? And who do I contact about this? So I think the happenstance thing of people discovering, information, discovering knowledge, or at least the existence of it, who to contact, I think that's very valuable in eliminating duplication of effort, synergizing activities, right? And encouraging collaboration, I think that's an important aspect.
Yeah, that's true. That's the downside of having everything in separate silos is you might end up having this, similar data sets in more than one place because people don't even know that it exists somewhere else.
So I really would discourage that. I think, if we're talking about knowledge management for an organization, where, all the concepts and things like that are kind of linked together, and then you can graph it.
Well, yeah, okay, but I mean, there's always trade-offs. I mean, even in a system where there's full, I guess you'd call it granularity of permission, you can specify for any data point, these are the people who can access it. I don't know. There's still always the risk that you'll get the permissions wrong or something, or you'll forget to set something as...
Exactly. So that I think that's where if it's designed into it. So, for example, take a semantic query, right, where if you query the title and the overview, and those supposedly not sensitive, so at least you can query that stuff, get some numbers and so on, right? Whatever counts and things like that, aggregated values. But then if you query maybe a property that maybe the content of that property needs to be secured, not the definition of the property, like that property can be public information, right? But the actual stored value, like medical record number or something like that, people's names and any of the sensitive, PHI information are flagged as an identifier, then, the values stored in those for queries could be, based on people's permissions, right? Who can see the value for those property fields.
Yeah. That would be a nice way to be able to do it. Sure. I don't know how feasible that is from
row level permissions.
Yeah. So you say anything associated with this field is only viewable by these groups or something. Yeah. It would be nice. I think that's all my questions. But yeah, it was very interesting hearing about Datapedia and all the uses that it's getting. I think especially people would be would be pleased to hear about its use in healthcare and fighting cancer, which I think everyone agrees is a very worthy cause. Anything else you want to talk about or mention?
No, I think since I've attended the first conference, the EMW Con, and meeting you and a whole bunch of other folks, and especially with the recent conference as well. I mean, a lot of the same folks are really going to these conferences. Continue to open my eyes. I think even more into possibilities, and it really excites me. And get me going again. Sometimes I get focused on my other duties, but really, going back into, our Datapedia and continuing to, extend features to even add more value to the content that's already there. I think it's an effort worth pursuing. And I think some of the, being able to share, I think some of that information, like a forum like this, I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and appreciate, the opportunity.
Well, great. That's a great way to end this podcast, and that's a very nice endorsement of the software, of the conferences, and I guess of this podcast. So, it was great talking to you, and thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you. Take care.
And this has been another episode of Between the Brackets. I want to again thank my guest, Alex Tanchoco of Memorial Sloan Kettering. Thanks to all of you for listening, and I'll see you next time.